Just after midnight on October 15, 2018, the Kloss family was asleep in their small home along US Highway 8, a lonely stretch of road in rural Wisconsin. The house was silent until a car crept up the driveway, headlights off, its driver dressed in black and carrying a shotgun. Inside, 13-year-old Jamie Kloss slept beside her dog, Molly. But Molly sensed something first. She bolted upright, barking wildly. The sharp noise shattered the stillness, jolting Jamie awake. Heart pounding, Jamie ran to the window. Through the glass, she saw a shadowy figure moving toward the house, a man dressed head to toe in black with a shotgun in his hand. Panic surged. She sprinted to her parents' bedroom, breathless, blurting out what she had seen. James Kloss didn't need to be told twice. He felt it immediately, that sickening rush of adrenaline that tells you something is horribly wrong. "Hide upstairs," he told his wife and daughter. Then he hurried to the front door to confront whoever was out there in the middle of the night. Through the small glass pane set into the door, James caught a glimpse of the figure. In that split second, he tried to make sense of it, tried to believe it might be a police officer, someone with a reason to be there in the middle of the night. Clinging to that faint hope, he called out, his voice tight but commanding, "Show me your badge!" The man outside didn't answer. He stepped closer, raised the shotgun, and aimed directly at the glass, directly at James's face. Then he fired. The blast killed James instantly. Upstairs, Jamie and her mother heard it, the deafening crack of the shot, the terrible finality of it, and they knew. They bolted to the bathroom, slammed the door shut and shoved a dresser in front of it. Then, desperate for any kind of cover, they climbed into the bathtub and pulled the shower curtain closed and held each other tight, praying for it all to stop. Jake fired again, blowing the door open. He stepped inside, coldly stepping over James's body as if it were nothing, an act that spoke to a complete absence of humanity. He moved through the house with grim purpose, searching each room with methodical precision. When he didn't find Jamie downstairs, he climbed the stairs and headed straight for the bathroom door, the last place left to check. It was locked. Jake kicked, rammed, and shoved his shoulder against the door, but the dresser barricading it held firm. Inside, Denise, who was clutching her phone, dialed 911. The call connected, and she screamed for help, but the signal was weak. Her words came through broken and garbled on the dispatcher's end. Outside, Jake kept pounding at the door, his determination unbroken. Finally, he managed to break open the upper panel, not blocked by the dresser, and crawled through. Denise dropped the phone. The dispatcher heard only static before the line cut off. Jake tore the shower curtain aside. Inside the tub, Denise had wrapped her arms around Jamie, shielding her with her body, her face a mask of terror, but unyielding in her maternal instinct to protect her child. Jake thrust a roll of duct tape toward Denise and ordered her to tape Jamie's mouth. She froze, refusing. Fear, love, and defiance held her still. Jake set the shotgun down. He shoved Denise aside and did it himself, binding Jamie's wrists behind her back, taping her ankles, and wrapping the tape around her mouth. Then he dragged her out of her mother's arms and out of the only place she felt safe. Jake picked up his shotgun and fired at Denise. The blast was instant, final. He grabbed Jamie and dragged her out of the place. He hauled her down the stairs, past her father's lifeless body, and out the front door. Then he forced her into the trunk of his car. Before we dive in, do me one quick favor. If this story pulls you in, hit the like button and subscribe. It takes 1 second, but it helps these cases reach thousands more people who need to see them. He climbed behind the wheel. He sped down the driveway, unaware of just how close he had come to being caught. Because just 20 seconds later, a line of squad cars, lights flashing, raced toward the Kloss home. Jake saw them coming and panicked. Thinking they were onto him, he slowed down to avoid suspicion. But the police blew past him, unaware that the suspect, and his hostage were right there. They missed him by seconds. Back at the house, dispatchers had already traced Denise's desperate 911 call to the rural property. Though the words had come through distorted, the sound of fear, a yell, maybe a scream, was unmistakable. Something terrible was happening.
Deputies reached the house 5 minutes after the call came in, but by then, the killer was gone, taking Jamie with him into the night. Pulling into the driveway, they saw 2 vehicles, a red pickup and a white SUV, but the house itself was silent. No lights glowed outside, no movement inside. The stillness felt wrong, haunting, especially after hearing screams on the emergency call just moments earlier. For a split second, they wondered if they had the wrong address, but then they noticed a faint light glowing from an upstairs room, and the front door? It stood wide open. They announced themselves and stepped inside. Just past the threshold, near the kitchen door, they saw a body. James Kloss lay on his back with devastating facial injuries, a shotgun shell discarded near his foot. Death had been instantaneous. Recognizing the gravity of what they were walking into, the deputies pressed forward. They didn't make it far before finding the second body. Near the entrance to the upstairs bathroom, they found Denise Kloss. The wound was catastrophic, evidence of a shot fired directly to the head at close range. The horror escalated. 2 adults were dead, but where was Jamie? The 13-year-old girl who lived there was nowhere in sight. Within moments, deputies realized this wasn't just a double homicide. It was an abduction, and every second now mattered. The house told a grim story. The front door had been blasted open, other doors had been kicked in. Yet beyond the shotgun shells and the damage, there was little physical evidence. No hair, no footprints, no tire tracks outside. Nothing left behind to trace. The killer had been methodical, erasing nearly every sign of his presence, leaving the scene feeling almost sterile. At first, investigators considered all possibilities, even the faint notion that Jamie might have somehow been involved. But that thought was quickly dismissed. The nature of the attack was too brutal, too calculated. This was not the work of a terrified teenager. It was the work of someone who had planned everything and taken her with him. An ambulance was called, but when EMTs arrived, their fears were confirmed. Nothing could be done. James and Denise were gone. The focus shifted immediately. Jamie Kloss had to be found. Meanwhile, Jake Patterson was already miles away, driving deeper into the night. For 2 long hours, Jamie lay bound and gagged in the trunk. Earlier, she had heard the police sirens when they sped past them, and it sparked hope that rescue was near. But then the sound faded, swallowed by the night, leaving her in despair deeper than before. She sobbed quietly, every jolt of the car a reminder that she was being taken further from home, further from safety. Finally, they reached Jake's father's cabin, tucked away in the woods. Jake opened the trunk, yanking Jamie out. He dragged her to the door. Above it, a sign read, "Patterson's Retreat." Inside, the scene was as disturbing as the crime. The cabin was filthy, cluttered with trash, food scattered everywhere, a stench that clung to the air. The chaos seemed to mirror Jake himself, disordered, vile, and disturbingly detached from normal life. He led Jamie to his bedroom and handed her pajamas. She had to change, he told her, because he was going to burn her clothes, erasing evidence, erasing any piece of the world she'd known before. But as she changed, he stood there and watched. A disturbing violation, one that spoke not just to control, but to the objectification that defined his crime. When she was done, he took her clothes, went outside, and burned them, destroying the last physical link to her family, her home, and the life that had been stolen from her. Jake made it clear from the start that this was where Jamie would live now. He spoke with cold authority, laying down rules she had no choice but to follow. No noise, no escape attempts, no breaking the rules ever. The consequences, he warned, would be severe. To drive the point home, he leaned his shotgun against the wall where Jamie could see it, an unspoken reminder of what defiance would cost. Then he told her, flatly, that if anyone ever came looking for her, they wouldn't leave alive. The message was clear. Fear was her only companion. Then he showed her where she would be kept. Under his bed.
It was a small twin bed, shoved against the wall. Jake forced Jamie to crawl beneath it, into a dark, narrow space barely large enough for her body. Once she was inside, he slid heavy containers, filled with weights, around the edges, boxing her in. She couldn't stretch out. She could barely move. It was claustrophobic, suffocating, designed to make her feel helpless. For the next 88 days, this became her prison. Whenever Jake left the house, she remained trapped there for hours, sometimes 8, 10, even 12, without food, water, or access to a bathroom. Eventually, Jake forced Jamie to share his bed every night. That first night, he likely slept on the couch, while Jamie remained locked beneath the bed, enduring a terrifying initiation into captivity. It was a grim period of psychological conditioning before he moved her to such close proximity. Meanwhile, word of the horrific events at the Kloss home spread quickly. The Barron County community was left reeling, shaken by a crime scene described as unlike anything they had ever seen. Almost instantly, the community united with a single purpose: to bring Jamie home. The case exploded into national headlines, dominating news broadcasts and flooding social media. The search for Jamie became massive, fueled by fear, hope, and a sense of shared grief. Just 4 days after her disappearance, 100 volunteers combed the local area. A week later, that number swelled to 2,000, nearly 2/3 of Barron's entire population. They trudged through woods, waded streams, scoured cornfields, and walked neighborhood streets, each step driven by the desperate hope of finding her. Prayer vigils were held. Friends, neighbors, and strangers gathered together, clinging to faith. Jamie's aunt made a heartfelt plea on television, clutching Molly, the family dog who had miraculously survived the night of terror. The FBI announced a $25,000 reward for information, quickly matched by the turkey plant where Jamie's parents worked, bringing the total to $50,000. Tips poured in. Every lead was chased, but none brought them closer. The funeral for James and Denise took place 12 days after the attack, drawing hundreds of mourners. Yet, heartbreakingly, Jamie could not attend. A cruel, almost unthinkable loss for a child who had just lost everything. As days turned into weeks, the community refused to give up hope. By day 77, people were invoking the spirit of Christmas, praying it might somehow bring Jamie home. For investigators, one of the hardest parts of the case was the lack of physical evidence. Despite a meticulous search of the home, all they recovered were a few spent shotgun shells and the shattered doors. No footprints, no tire tracks, no hair, no blood. It was as if Jamie had vanished into thin air. Proof that the killer had planned carefully and understood how to avoid leaving forensic traces. The FBI joined the case almost immediately, bringing additional resources. Investigators dug into Jamie's digital life, combing through Snapchat and Facebook for signs of a secret boyfriend or hidden connection, a common lead in missing teen cases, but found nothing. A massive search began, combining local police, the FBI, and the National Missing Persons Program. Teams scoured the area on foot, used thermal imaging drones, and brought in 4 canine units. The dogs were given Jamie's scent, but no trail surfaced. Swabs were taken from the victims' bodies in hopes of finding biological evidence, but no foreign DNA was detected. One critical lead did emerge, a partial DNA sequence lifted from one of the shotgun shells, something to compare against potential suspects later on.
Investigators also reviewed video footage from the night of the murders and spotted a car heading in the opposite direction of first responders rushing to the Kloss home. The driver had pulled over to let them pass. Though the footage was grainy, analysts narrowed the vehicle down to what appeared to be a red or black Dodge sedan. It wasn't much, but it was enough to rule out some suspects and guide interviews with family members, co-workers, and others who owned similar cars. As weeks passed, the massive police presence began to shrink. The command center scaled back, a necessary step in long investigations, but a discouraging one for those still clinging to hope. To catch the suspect in case he returned, officers installed video cameras and motion sensors around the Kloss home. Investigators knew that some criminals revisit crime scenes, and they didn't want to miss that chance.
Jake Patterson, the perpetrator of the crime, was born on June 17, 1997. He was 21 years old when he carried out these horrific crimes. He grew up in a remote part of Douglas County, Wisconsin, with his father, Patrick, his mother, Deborah, and his two older siblings, Eric and Katie. The town had barely 800 residents, a level of isolation that would later mark Jake's life. Up until age 10, his childhood was described as fairly normal. But when his parents divorced, everything changed. Divorce at such a young age can leave deep emotional scars, often linked to problems with attachment and self-control later on. After the separation, the family home was sold, and Jake split time between his parents' houses. His father bought a cabin in the woods, remote, hidden, and far from neighbors. That cabin would later become the place where Jamie was held, a chilling reflection of Jake's growing isolation. When he entered high school in 2011, classmates described him as very quiet, almost invisible. He didn't join clubs or sports. He was sometimes called nerdy, but mostly he just kept to himself. He was even voted quietest in his class. A photo from that time shows him sitting apart from the others. This kind of social withdrawal can hide deeper issues, like feelings of alienation or resentment. And despite his calm exterior, Jake had a temper. He was known to fly off the handle over small things. Once, in gym class, he threw a ball straight at someone's face after being hit. Such outbursts suggest poor impulse control and a simmering anger beneath the surface. Jake dated only one girl in high school, Brianna, and their 4-month relationship left her deeply shaken. When they were alone at his dad's cabin, she said he became a different person, darker, colder, like he had two sides to him. What she saw next disturbed her even more. Jake liked to collect dead animals, including roadkill. He would cut them open, remove their insides, stuff them, and hang their heads on his bedroom wall. The comparison to Jeffrey Dahmer is hard to ignore. Jake's cruelty toward animals was an early warning sign for future violence against people. It showed he lacked empathy and found a disturbing sense of control and causing suffering. Brianna, his ex-girlfriend, also described him as a constant liar. Anything he said, you didn't know if it was true, she recalled. Lying was his way of manipulating others. When Brianna broke up with him, Jake lost control. He slashed all 4 of her car tires, an angry, destructive act that showed he couldn't handle rejection. After graduating high school in 2015 at age 18, Jake's life spiraled. His grades had been mostly C's and D's, and he struggled to find direction. He briefly joined the Marine Corps, but was discharged after just 5 weeks of basic training because of a medical issue. His father said this crushed him, leaving him feeling like a failure and unsure of what to do next. He bounced from job to job, at a turkey processing plant, a wood pellet factory, and later at the Saputo cheese factory, but quit after only a day or 2 each time. Friends described him as extremely lazy, unable to commit to anything or handle routine or authority. Most of his days were spent alone at his father's cabin.
When his brother Eric moved out, Jake was left completely isolated. At first, he seemed to want it that way, cutting off contact with almost everyone. But over time, the isolation turned into deep loneliness. He stopped leaving the cabin, lost all motivation to work, and became bitter about life. That loneliness grew into something darker. Jake began thinking, I don't want to be on my own anymore. I need a friend, maybe even a girlfriend. But instead of trying to form a real connection, he came up with a twisted plan. He would abduct someone. According to reports, he'd been thinking about this for over 2 years, since he was around 19, watching and waiting for the right person to take. He believed if no one wanted to be his friend or girlfriend, he would simply force someone to fill that role. It was a shocking sign of his narcissism and his complete inability to build healthy relationships. He thought about taking a young girl just to keep her. He knew it wasn't normal, yet he still planned how it might happen. In his mind, the only way was through a home invasion, a chillingly cold and calculated plan.
The opportunity came in October 2018. On his first day working at the Saputo cheese factory while driving along US Highway 8, he pulled up behind a school bus. That's when he saw Jamie Kloss for the first time. She was laughing, smiling, and talking with her friends. At that moment, he thought, "That's the girl I'm going to take. That's the one I want." From then on, he focused on her. Despite being lazy in general, Jake poured disturbing effort into planning her abduction. This mix of apathy in life but obsession with one dark fantasy is often seen in offenders driven by powerful compulsions. He knew it would be hard to take Jamie from her home without being caught, so he planned every detail. He expected violence and was prepared to kill anyone inside to leave no witnesses. Before entering the house, he even told himself either Jamie's parents would die or he would. It showed a twisted level of commitment to his goal and a total lack of conscience. He got his father's shotgun, shaved all his hair to avoid leaving DNA, and wore gloves so he wouldn't leave fingerprints. He wiped down the shotgun shells, changed his car's license plates with stolen ones, removed the interior lights, and even cut the escape cord in his trunk. He bought new black clothes, a ski mask, and a balaclava. These steps show careful planning and an awareness of how to avoid being caught. Clear signs of a calculated, though deeply disturbed mind. Jake had hoped in his mind to find love this way. He thought, the longer time went on, maybe he and Jamie could live a life together. He even imagined getting an apartment with her after a year. This shows how out of touch with reality he was. He believed that after killing her parents and kidnapping her, Jamie would forgive him, fall in love with him, and they would live happily together. This thinking reveals a dangerous level of delusion and a total lack of empathy for her feelings. After a couple of weeks, he would invite Jamie would eat and hang out with him. Jamie started complying out of fear. She ate, played games, watched TV, and even talked to him like a friend, just to survive. And Jake believed Jamie was beginning to trust him, which fed his delusion that his plan was working. He tried to be nice to her at times, even bringing her Starbucks, thinking small gestures would make her forget the murders and eventually see him as a boyfriend. Jake also forced Jamie to share his bed. Though no sexual assault was reported, he admitted he considered it but was held back by a flicker of guilt, a fleeting trace of conscience that never truly stopped his darker impulses. Jamie Kloss was born in July 2005. She was 13 years old when she was abducted. She was the only child of James and Denise Kloss. The Kloss family was very close. James and Denise adored Jamie, calling her the center of their lives. Denise loved gardening and was active in their local church. James was a devoted Green Bay Packers fan,
Both parents worked side by side for 27 years at the Genie turkey plant in Barron. Jamie was shy and quiet, but loved dancing, volleyball, and ice skating. She also loved spending time with her little dog Molly. Friends said the two were like peas in a pod. In a school assignment, Jamie once wrote that if she had $1 million, she would feed the hungry and give the rest to the poor. A glimpse of her kind, empathetic nature. At the time of her abduction, Jamie was in 8th grade at Riverview Middle School. She had a close group of friends and shared a special bond with her parents. Denise was her closest confidant. Jamie often said her mom and dad were the most important people in her life, and she lost them in one night. The trauma of that moment would stay with her forever. After 88 days in captivity, Jamie had nearly lost hope of being found. This sense of helplessness is common among victims of long-term captivity, where their belief in outside rescue fades and their world shrinks to just survival. But at some point, Jamie's mindset shifted. She realized no one might come to free her, and her only chance was to save herself.
So she began planning. For weeks, she tested whether she could move the heavy plastic containers filled with weights that Patterson used to trap her under the bed. Slowly, she discovered she could, just enough to squeeze out. She knew she would only have one chance and would need to wait for the perfect moment. Despite her fear, she showed remarkable foresight and courage, turning quiet endurance into a bold act of survival. On January 10, 2019, Jake told Jamie he would be gone for 5 to 6 hours. Jamie immediately knew this was a long time for him to be away, and it might be her only chance to escape. She stayed hidden under the bed until she heard him leave, get into his car, and drive off. Once the coast was clear, she pushed the boxes aside just enough to crawl out, to discover that the door to the cabin wasn't locked. She grabbed a pair of Jake's New Balance trainers from the front door and put them on, a quick, instinctive move to survive. Then she stepped outside and ran. After weeks of captivity, she was finally out of the cabin. Jamie had no idea where she was, and it was bitterly cold in Wisconsin. She continued running until she saw a woman walking her dog. The woman was Jean Nutter. Jamie rushed toward her and said, "Help, help, I need help." Then added, "I'm Jamie, I need help." Despite her ordeal, her mind was clear enough to explain who she was. Jean recognized her instantly. Jamie's story had been everywhere, on the news, on leaflets, even on billboards. She could see Jamie was wearing only a sweatshirt and oversized shoes, and she looked exhausted and disheveled. Jean led Jamie to the nearest house, which belonged to Peter and Kristen Kasinskis. Once inside, Jamie explained what had happened, naming Jake Patterson as the man who had kidnapped her and killed her parents. The 3 adults were terrified. They knew Jake lived just a few doors down and could return at any moment. Without wasting time, they called 911. During the 911 call, Jean told the dispatcher that a young girl had appeared at her home, saying her name was Jamie Kloss. Jean confirmed she was 100% sure it was Jamie after comparing her face to the photo she had seen on the news. As they waited for police to arrive, Peter Kasinskis stood guard at the door with his own gun, a natural act of self-preservation, knowing Jake Patterson could return at any moment. They pleaded with the dispatcher to send help immediately, and police responded quickly. Upon arrival, officers immediately secured Jamie, ushering her into a squad car and driving her away from the danger zone as fast as possible. The priority was clear: get her far from Patterson and begin the process of protecting both her physical safety and fragile psychological state. Back at the cabin, Jake Patterson returned to find Jamie gone. Enraged, he experienced what psychologists call a narcissistic injury, a deep sense of personal violation at losing what he saw as his possession. Convinced she couldn't have gone far, he got back into his red car, planning to track her down, still deluded enough to think she wouldn't actively seek help. But as fate would have it, the police car carrying Jamie was already on the road and heading toward him. When another vehicle approached, Jamie spotted it and cried out, "Oh my God! Oh my God! I think that's him! I think that's Jake!" It was. Other officers who had been alerted moved in quickly and pulled up behind him. Jake, unarmed and realizing he had no chance, stepped out of his vehicle, raised his hands, and said simply, "I know what this is about. I did it." His immediate confession revealed a strange mix of resignation and perhaps even a perverse sense of relief that the ordeal was finally over. Moments later, Jake Patterson was arrested. It was later revealed that during the 5 to 6 hours Jake was away from the cabin, giving Jamie the window she needed to escape, he was out applying for a job. Investigators noted this revealed how disturbingly confident he was. Patterson truly believed he could get away with his crimes, return to a normal life, and that Jamie would never escape or be rescued. It was a chilling display of narcissistic grandiosity and a warped sense of reality.
When the news broke that the 13-year-old girl missing for 88 days had been found alive and safe, it shocked the nation and even the police. Jamie was immediately taken to the hospital for a full medical assessment. Doctors confirmed she had no physical injuries. That night, Jamie spent her first night in a hospital bed, safe, for the first time in months. The following day, her aunt, Jennifer Smith, signed guardianship papers, officially becoming Jamie's legal guardian. Jamie moved in with her Aunt Jennifer and Uncle Bob, beginning the long process of rebuilding her life. One of the first bright moments came when she was reunited with her dog Molly, who had survived the horrific night of the home invasion. The reunion brought her a small but deeply meaningful sense of comfort and familiarity amid her fractured world. Back in Barron, her hometown, erupted in relief and celebration. The tight-knit community, which had never stopped searching and hoping, poured out support, sending gifts, cards, and messages from across the globe. Wisconsin State Representative Romaine Quinn presented Jamie with a Hometown Hero Award, honoring her extraordinary courage and resilience. Her Aunt Jennifer echoed the sentiment, stating that Jamie was absolutely deserving of the hero part of this award. A fundraiser was also held to support her and her family, a testament to the power of collective hope and the unwavering strength of a community that refused to give up. Just 4 days later, on January 14th, Patterson appeared in court by video to be officially charged. The state requested a cash bail of $5 million. By then, Patterson had already confessed in detail. According to one report, he said he confessed to spare Jamie from the pain of a trial, though some saw this as an attempt to control the story and appear remorseful. His confession outlined how carefully he had planned the crime. While awaiting trial and sentencing, Patterson wrote a letter to a news outlet expressing superficial remorse. He admitted what he had done was stupid and added, "I'm sorry, Jamie, for everything. I know it doesn't mean much," drawing little hearts around her name. This unsettling detail revealed his ongoing lack of genuine empathy, suggesting a self-serving attempt to soften his image rather than true remorse. Patterson ultimately pleaded guilty to all charges after spending about 2 months in Barron County Jail. Because of the guilty plea, no trial took place. His sentencing was held on May 24, 2019. The kidnapping and murder of Jamie's parents left a deep and lasting scar on her life. In her own words, "Jake Patterson took away my mom and my dad. She loved them deeply, and they had done everything they could to protect her and make her happy. Now she must live the rest of her life without them, carrying memories of that night she can never erase." Losing her home added to the pain. It was where she felt safe, where she kept her things, and where she had so many happy memories. But after the tragedy, Jamie could never return there. The house was eventually torn down, cutting her off from the place she once called home and deepening the sense of loss. The trauma stayed with her. In her victim impact statement, Jamie explained that she now needs an alarm in the house just to sleep at night. She also finds it hard to go out in public because she feels scared and anxious, clear signs of the lasting fear and stress she carries. Yet, despite everything, Jamie is trying to move forward. She has returned to school and is working to rebuild her life step by step, showing the same courage and determination that helped her survive.
Elizabeth Smart, who was also kidnapped as a teenager, visited Barron to give advice on helping Jamie. She told the community to just go back to normal, take down the Welcome Home Jamie banners, and speak to her like any other girl, not constantly about what happened. She also said that if someone didn't know Jamie before the kidnapping, they shouldn't approach her or try to talk to her in the street. Her advice, coming from someone who had survived a similar experience, showed how important it is to help a survivor feel normal again and avoid reminders that could cause more trauma. The town reportedly followed her advice.
J.C. Dugard, another long-term abduction survivor, sent Jamie a message saying the road ahead will have many ups and downs, and encouraged her to allow yourself to grieve and move forward. According to a statement from her family in 2020, 2 years after her escape, Jamie was doing well. She enjoys dancing and going to school, and she is surrounded by people who love and support her. She is making the best of her life, showing her strength and the importance of having supportive relationships after trauma. At that time, Jamie was still living with her aunt. In her victim impact statement, she said, "I will go on to do great things in my life." A strong message of hope and determination to shape her future, despite everything she went through.
Thank you for watching and staying till the end. Every story we tell is a piece of someone's truth, and your support helps keep their voice alive. If you felt something today, don't just move on. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, so together we can keep shining light into the darkest corners of the human mind.